Billy Whitford. You can hear me, right, Billy?
Good morning.
Good morning. Billy Whitford, welcome to the Passion Project. I just mentioned that next time I'm going to turn the mic on early because everybody's already missed the fun that we just had with trying to get Billy to wear headphones, and this is classic. Billy, thanks so much for being here. I know we were just talking too offline, this is not your natural habitat. You do not love to be in front of the lights and the camera, so I really appreciate it. I've been trying to get you in for a long time, and for everybody's sake, I've really coerced Billy into coming today because I know that his story is so good, and there's so much that I don't know, and I guarantee other people don't know. They know a lot of the Billy Whitford story. We'll share a lot about what you do and how you've done it and where, and there's a long path, but even the people that know you well, I contend there's a lot of the formative stuff that they don't know, and that's what I'm really excited to learn about. I know enough to get in trouble and hopefully to ask some good questions, but really an amazing story and what you've done with it. The name Billy Whitford in the paddling and rowing world in the US, continental, and Hawaii is very, very well known for a reason. But as part of the setup, this is where you're so uncomfortable. Billy's the most humble guy I know, hates being in the limelight, hates people to know what he does, because he does a lot for people. And he'll do anything for anybody at any time. I think you were driving trucks and trailers this morning, whether that's driving to Long Beach or across country. Never a complaint, never a whine, always with a giggle and a dad joke or two. And I'm just super stoked to shine a light on and dig deeper into your story. So thanks, Billy.
You're more than welcome, and you're the only one I would do this for.
Well,
Mark, you have become such a great supporter, great friend of, historical, in all of this podcast world. I find yours probably the most interesting.
Well, I'm very fortunate. Thank you. I'm
true.
very fortunate to
true.
have really cool people, many of which I've met because of you through the Newport Aquatic Center. We will talk a lot about NAC, but again, it's a giant community that you are formative in building and have been running it for a very long time. Again, I know I'm foreshadowing a lot of today's conversation, but many of the people that I've had in here, because your name is one of the names that comes up most frequently in here, even though it's not a paddling podcast. I definitely have paddlers and boat builders and people that do really cool things, but your name comes up the most regularly, and we'll talk about some of those folks because they share stories about you and the impact you had on their careers and their lives. So very, very cool. So thanks. So for today, what I really want to do is talk about the Billy Whitford story, not just Newport Aquatic Center, which we'll talk a lot about, but there's so much cool stuff going back to your upbringing, which we'll talk about in a second. It was, a crow flies from here. You haven't gone very far. But Billy Whitford, executive director of Newport Aquatic Center, incredible coach and program developer for outrigger and rowing and many other clubs and groups in those worlds. Really, really amazing. And so if you paddle in the US, mainland or otherwise, Australia, et cetera, you know this guy, or you've done races put on by Billy or NAC, et cetera. So that's where we're going today. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Billy, if I can start, we're going to go pretty chronologically. I know that, as I just mentioned, you grew up so we're sitting here in the Newport, Costa Mesa area on 17th Street. Newport Aquatic Center is about 2.5 miles that way, and the bay is about 2 miles that way. You haven't gone far at all. I haven't gone very far either. So, Billy, tell us about, you grew up here. I'm going to start there with you. Tell us about growing up here, because how you did was different than a lot of people, but it was also at a time where it was very, very different from what Newport and Costa Mesa are today. So can you tell a story about your parents, maybe how they got here, and then let's start there with where you grew up.
Yeah, I was lucky because my dad was involved with the Boy Scout Jamboree in 1953, where Fashion Island is today. And a gentleman named Bill Spurgeon, from the Spurgeon family that founded Santa Ana, he and my dad basically put on the infrastructure for the Boy Scout Jamboree. It was about 70, 80,000 Boy Scout worldwide Jamboree in 53. Pretty interesting, get all those people to come together at that time. So the infrastructure of Irvine Terrace all the way out to UCI area and inland, and actually the roads. In fact, the funny story is my dad actually cut Jamboree Road on a D9, used to be called Ralph's Road.
What was a D9?
Tractor.
So your dad actually...
Yeah. Well, that's the story.
Gotcha.
And then there's a favorite picture that he had. He took a aerial photograph and put 1,000 marks lot dots on it. He goes, "Yep, that was me. 1,200 latrines I dug." So you drive through West or East Bluff, you wonder why somebody's garden is greener than the other. I can tell you why.
It's incredible. And for anybody that knows the area, Jamboree Road is one of the two major thoroughfares that goes from the coast to John Wayne Airport out to the 405 freeway. It's the MacArthur and Jamboree, but it was named after exactly what you're talking about.
Yep, that way. So then Bill Spurgeon, at that time, it was Boy Scouts. He actually is credited with starting Explorer Scouts, law, aviation, Sea Scouts. So they got a piece of property from the county and started the Sea Scout base down on PCH. And he hired my dad to run the facility. So I'm the luckiest kid in town. I got a 3-acre playground right on the water, and I got to experience the harbor, sailing, and then all the outrigger paddling and rowing was right. Orange Coast College was right next door. The very first canoes were underneath my bedroom window in '59, and so I'm a little punk kid just having a blast in a playground right on the harbor. It was just the coolest thing. Ask any of the old timers, anybody around the harbor. It was so different then, and it was just, I was considered myself really lucky.
What was it like back then? Because we're talking the mid-50s?
Late 50s.
Late 50s.
Early 60s.
So you move into the Sea Scout base how old were you when you moved in there?
6.
When you were 6.
1959, 1960.
And so for anybody, this is right off Coast Highway on the bay in Newport, right next door basically to the Balboa Bay Club.
Yeah.
Was the Bay Club there at the time?
Bungalows.
Bungalows.
No seawall. Right next to us with there was 2 Quonset huts that Orange Coast College had for their rowing program. And then the Bay Club was just bungalows at that time.
Wow.
And I could go almost the whole length of the channel underneath ramps of docks in a little canoe, me and my brothers just horsing around and fishing and doing all that. It was just a different vibe back then. It was so cool.
And still, the sea base is still there. And the rowing center next door is still there. They're beautiful buildings now as opposed to Quonset huts, and the Bay Club is anything but bungalows. But, I mean, that's a pretty iconic area. I mean, that's where John Wayne was always hanging out, probably around that time, maybe a little later at the Bay Club.
Oh, no, he was
there at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Because he lived even further down. You probably were hanging out under his dock, right?
Grew up with the Bayshore gang, all the guys down there.
Gotcha.
And the Duke it's silly, but he would come to some of our football practices. We'd see him over here at Save-On. There's a guy standing behind me. "Well, son, you gonna move up?"
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Those were the fun days. And they had hydroplane races out in front of the sea base. The Harbor Patrol would stop in for coffee with my mom. There was actually a seaplane that landed in the old charts. It's actually a seaplane landing strip in the North Lido Channel right there. It's just different times.
I would imagine in those times the amount of freedom that you had, because it was so safe and not populated like it is today. I'm guessing you guys had free reign out there.
All the kids growing up at that time, it was all free reign. And it's so different now because it wasn't yacht clubby and it wasn't, high-end motorboats, high-end sailboats, high-end anything. Whatever you could put together, we'd go out and horse around in. And the Sea Scout base was quasi-military-ish. I grew up, marching and saluting and uniforms and all of that. And so that environment, they have competitions. And every year we would travel to some naval institution, Government Island up in the Bay Area or something like that, and compete against other Sea Scout ships. Knot tying, navigation, rope climbing, bosun's chair, whaleboat rowing, sailing, things like that. So you learned all those basic skills in the waterman world, let's call it.
And you started doing that at what age did you really, were you immediately at 6 years old when you guys moved there, or did you start in that world?
I was a little punk kid chasing all the Sea Scouts around and just lucked into it. Anytime they would go out sailing, I'd go. In fact, a guy named Bill Lee ended up having a very storied career and built, I think, Santa Cruz 70s, up in Santa Cruz. He grew up as a Sea Scout. And so I'm sailing this boat called the Drop Boat. It was an old rescue boat through the harbor, beer cans, Thirsty Thursday night races and stuff. So it was pretty cool.
How neat. It's incredible. And you mentioned, and just because it's part of the future world, but you mentioned the first outriggers were there. Can you talk about, you said the first outriggers were right under your bedroom window. Were those the first outriggers in Newport, the first ones on the mainland? I don't know. What's the story?
1959, they came over as an exhibition. They brought a Hawaiian group they called the All Stars, and they raced as an exhibition from Catalina to Balboa Pier. And they were
from Catalina?
Yeah, from Catalina, from Avalon, Balboa Pier.
Was that what year?
I think it was 59. Art Gronsky was involved as an escort boat and stuff. It's just, and there's an actual black and white film that Bud has.
Wow. That's
just the coolest thing to set you back historical that he's put together. And then right after that, the Koa canoes couldn't live in California because of the weather. And so they pack up the Koa canoes on a trailer, send it back over. The name of the canoe is a Malia. And then we said, on this end, we said, listen, we'll take it over to Matson for you. We'll trailer it up there, put it on the ship, send it back. Well, that night, a guy named Tom Johnson, who was a pioneer in the fiberglass world, because this is all brand new industry, took a skin of the Malia, put all the gear back in, wrapped it back up in the burlap cover, and put it on the ship and sent it over. The guys in Hawaii unpack it, and they go, what's this? And they take their thumb along the seams, and they go, it's this green, gooey kind of this PVC mold release. That's the only way paddling got started, because without fiberglass, we'd have been way behind in starting the sport of outrigger paddling.
Because the Koa canoes that you referenced, and we're going to come back, but it's super interesting. The Koa canoes were initially made out of one giant 40-some-odd foot log, only in Hawaii, and then they were modified over the years. But you wouldn't have built I'm sure the Indians and the folks that lived here hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, were using trees to carve out, but you're not going to make a ocean racing canoe out of a redwood tree here in California, I don't think. So
no.
Fiberglass was the way. Interesting. So we're going to definitely get into this but that was interesting that you grew up looking at that. It's definitely formative. There's a reason you started paddling very young, which we'll get to in a few. But let's go back. So you grew up with this freedom on the water. You've got your brothers, your folks. What was your mom doing at the time? You talked about your dad. Now, your dad also, let's a little bit more about them. Was your dad a teacher as well?
Yeah.
Where was he a teacher?
My dad started in Orange at Palmyra Elementary School. In fact, he was Charlie Brand, 6th grade teacher.
Charlie Brand was a big volleyball coach here. He still may well be, I don't know, for a very long time.
Great story. But he started there, and then he got hired down at Newport Elementary, taught there for over 40 years. And all the kids my era hated him.
Why?
Because he was really old-fashioned. He made them work and this and that. When they all got done, they thought he was the best because he made them work and learned some really good math skills and stuff. So in addition to his duties as the port captain for the sea base, he was teaching. And it's pretty interesting how he managed that facility. And I think that set in place some of the things I remembered on how he did it through consensus. Getting everybody to buy in, sitting around a table and talking about, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix that? How are we going to move this forward? What do we have to do to stop that? So that type of management kind of stuck with me, believe it or not.
No, I definitely believe that. Right?
Even though I like dictatorship, I got to get consensus.
You're well, there might be a juggling match there. How do you inspire people to do exactly what you want, right? That's good coaching, which we'll talk about too, because that's a big part of your world.
My mom was a Girl Scout leader, the senior Girl Scouts, the older Girl Scouts called Mariners. And so she was involved with Girl Scouting. My dad was involved. They got together. That's kind of how that took place. And then she started, took over Nikki's Flag Shop on PCH right next to Larson's Boatyard back in the day. And has since moved up to Old Newport Boulevard and been there for 112 years, I guess.
Right. Corky. And she's still doing
Corky's embroidery, Nikki's flag shop.
That's incredible.
Her property.
Yeah. Outstanding. And did you go to Newport L?
Nope.
So Newport L, for anybody, Newport L is the most sought after elementary school in the country, bar none. It is on the sand in Newport Beach. It's been there for, 75 years. It's the school that we all wanted to go to if you grew up around here, and only a small swath of people got to, but it's still there. It's right on the boardwalk. It's right on the sand. It's incredible. So Dad worked there, so you didn't go. Was that why you didn't go there?
No, it's the darndest thing. However they divided up the school district, we were part of a group. The school bus would go all the way down to Newport Shores, Lido Sands, come up the highway, pick me and my brothers up at the Sea Scout base, go into Bay Shores, literally through all the streets, pick up that group, and we went down to Corona del Mar. I went to Harbor View Elementary School.
Really? Wow.
All the way from K to 6. That's how I got to know all the CDM kids.
Got it. Which is my alma mater.
And so that's kind of how I got friends on both sides of the harbor. We're on the right side, they're on that side.
There's no lack of, there's
rivalry.
Everybody in Newport. So Newport is divided by the back bay, and the back bay is where the Newport Aquatic Center actually sits. And there's two high schools, one serves each side. So you have the Battle of the Bay, Battle of the Bell in all sports. There's a ton of rivalry, but most people are friends. At least at some point, they become close friends. You lifeguard together, you surf together, but there's always been that kind of rivalry. So you were going to the enemy side for elementary school. Where did you go to junior high school?
At Ensign.
How far is that from here? It's truly a mile from here. And then you must have gone to Newport Harbor High School, which is also right here behind us. What was that like back in those days? Fun? Cool?
I thought it was, I had the day. I'm not a scholar, but I had the best time in school. One, because of sports, but two, because of the buddies. Back then you had a gang, you had a group, and you'd have your Stingray bicycles, and we'd go play over the line. Everything was around sports, on the ocean, or on the fields. And it was always by bicycle. And no one gave a damn when you came home.
Yeah.
So that was really unique and real fun. But there was some really talented people around here too. So in those sports. So it was pretty good. The quality was way up. And in fact, even at Ensign, we'd have to run across PCH in the morning, climb the hill, go to school, climb the hill coming down, run across PCH going home. Same thing for Newport until my parents moved up to the heights up there. So the high school was the center. It was, back in those days, it was cool, but 68, 69, Vietnam is cooking. Two of my classmates, my neighbor, absolute neighbor on Snug Harbor, Ronnie Triano, got killed, infantry. And we were doing protests. We're doing sit-ins at Newport. It was such a different environment. Instead of just teaching you, they're trying to teach us what to learn instead of how to learn. And it was really an interesting group dynamic at that time, because you had the jocks, you had the hippies, but we all grew up together. We all knew each other. And so it was, I feel pretty lucky being able to contrast all of that in my head and pass it on today, so that no one gets too far right, too far left, down the middle, whatever. It was really cool. That was really fun.
Wow. And you mentioned sports. I mean, I have to just say, you think about our kids today, and you've got 3 kids, I've got 3 kids. There's no screens. There was no electric bikes. It was all under human power, doing stuff together. So good, right? Even when I was growing up here, it was the same thing, because it was before all that stuff, all that noise. So what a cool time to grow up. You mentioned sports. Everything was around sports. I know you played a lot. What sports do you play, and what were maybe I think you did a lot, but where did you focus at that time?
It was, there was no soccer. And so it was all Pop Warner football. And the cool thing is we all played together. Again, the CDM kids, Newport kids, Mesa kids. And we all played Pop Warner football. And then high school football that's where there was kind of a divide. That's when all of a sudden you got the polo and swimmers because Barnett, I mean, Newport was a phenomenal program.
Yeah.
Great athletes going that direction. And then those of us that couldn't swim competitively. So, and the football back in those days wasn't very serious at the high school. There was an effort to try, but it wasn't well received with the athletes in the area. So the football program didn't have a good vibe. So some of us that came up from Pop Warner, I wanted to play, and some of the other guys wanted to play, so we did. And along comes I don't.
Yeah, we're going to talk
story.
about, but there's a great story. I think that's where you're going because you had turned me onto it some time ago. But there's even a movie or short, like hour-long movie called Touchdown Newport. Talk about why is there a movie called Touchdown Newport, and why did that? And that happened on your watch. Why don't you talk a bit about it?
Again, I lucked out because my junior year, the one coach quit. They looked for another coach. They ended up hiring this guy named Ernie Johnson from Pico Rivera, El Rancho High School, which was
a little different than this.
Holy cow, a little different. This guy was all about winning football games, but doing it intelligently. We didn't have big guns. We didn't have big guys, but we were smarter. And it was only because of the way he prepared. Back in those days, nobody sat and watched films. Nobody had notebooks. We knew exactly what that team was going to do. If he put 3 fingers down, he's going to the right. If he's put to the left, he's going.
So what you're saying is
Scouting.
He did where nobody else did. He did all the video. He had it all mapped out. And I think if I remember the punchline, kind of what you're saying is, you guys, you were going this. You knew exactly what they were going to do before they were going to do it, and as a result, you outthunk. But you outprepared them.
Yeah, and come on, we weren't a big football strength area back in the day, especially high school kids. We'd rather go surf and hang out at the beach. Come on, you want to go to practice in the afternoon? Sorry, we're out on the beach. But we got dedicated and we bought into it, and it proved to a lot of us that it could be done. And so when the first game, we had a scrimmage. You want to hear all this? We had
Just keep it. Yeah.
We had a scrimmage against Modern Day, and they kicked man, they just blew us apart. The next week we got to play Anaheim. Holy crap! Anaheim is the team back in the day. I mean, phenomenal team. They came to the field and they had 75 kids running around doing pregame, and these kids are giant and they got facial hair and they're just monsters. They're not high school kids. We're scared to shit. We have 28 kids on our team, I think, something like that, and we beat them. So that set the stage for the whole season. And first time in 42 years we won Sunset League and blah blah blah.
So that's football. So great. Yeah. But it was all the introduction of Eddie Johnson. Is that right?
Ernie Johnson. EJ. And the film is pretty interesting because it's an impact that he had on the kids, not so much football. And I still today think about how to do something through his eyes or through his process of preparedness.
Well, thank you for that. And if anybody's interested, it's called Touchdown Newport. You can find it on Vimeo. It's free. It's about an hour long, but it's really cool. But it also talks, again, you mentioned your dad and how he was as a teacher for 30 years. Now you talked about Ernie Johnson and his impact on you guys. When we talk coaching, we'll talk about the influence of those guys, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of that has trickled into your way of looking at the world and coaching folks, because you've done a lot of that. One thing on football, and then we'll move on. Do you have a record?
Oh, good.
What's your record?
Yeah, I got 11 interceptions in one season. That's pretty cool.
Does that still hold?
Yeah, because that was hard to do, because back in those days, teams weren't, throwing the ball every down like they do now, pretty much. And being defensive, grinded out kind of football. But it was really cool. It's a game of cat and mouse. It's so simple. You know what they're going to do, so you play a game with them, and I got lucky. So that was pretty cool stuff.
Well, I think we make our own luck. But that's cool if that record still holds. It's been holding for a couple days, right?
I'm old.
40 years or more. Probably more. And we were talking earlier, your youngest daughter is big into football right now. Super fun to watch. And it's flag football, so it's a thinking sport more than it's just a pure grit sport, right?
You know, I didn't see it coming, but girls flag football is now CIF sanctioned sport, and it's booming. There's leagues all over the country, local, regional, national. My kid's going across the country to play girls flag football.
At what age? How old is she?
12.
I know, incredible.
They played 9 years old against boys. It was awesome. I love that kind of stuff. But then now it's also there's colleges giving full ride scholarships. It's an exhibition sport in 28 games.
For the Olympics.
Wow. It's really taken hold, and I like that because now they're thinking about the strategy of the sport. It's not the big hit and not getting the concussions.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of that.
You had mentioned when you played,
Yeah.
concussions were a big part of it back then, right?
Yeah.
Got it. No, it's really exciting. And we were talking about, well, we can talk more about it, but you've got 3 daughters, all very different. I've got 3 kids. We were talking about how completely different they can be, but all really cool. So you're in high school. What was your plan? Like, what was your goal at that point? Like, did you have football dreams? Did you have college dreams or career stuff? Like, what were you thinking you were going to, I mean, I'm sure you're going, I'm trying to stay out of Vietnam, but did you have a dream or a wish? Or if I had a magic wand back then, what would you have grown up to be?
I was on the path to go in the military.
You were?
Fully wanted to go in the military, Coast Guard or Navy, didn't matter. But once things got cooking, and it hits you when your neighbor, gets killed, it just threw a whole different deal on it. I still probably think that's my biggest regret. I still should have gone in the military because it fits my life. I could have done that very easily and learned the skills and been retired from something 30 years ago.
You never would have retired.
But at that point, I got burned out a little bit the next year because I had some injuries in high school. So I took a year, went to Orange Coast, and rowed on the crew team.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
See, I never knew that part. That explains a lot as we go forward towards today and the Newport Aquatic Center. I had no idea. How did you like that?
Loved it.
You did. And you did that for 1 year. You didn't
just 1 year, and then decided I wanted to get back into football. So I followed Ernie Johnson up to Cerritos College, where he was coaching up there, and it just because the only way I was going to get to college, everybody had to go to college. Oh, it's not for me, but maybe I could through sport. I got to get a scholarship. He was the pathway for me, and I ended up getting injured.
Oh, you did.
Blew my knee out backwards, blew my wrist out. I lived up there in Downey on a golf course in the old caretaker shack for 3 years. It was a great period of life. It really was. But it didn't work out football-wise. I'd have loved to have been a defensive back coach in the NFL. I love the strategy of the game.
So
but it wasn't for me.
Got it. But coaching's always been.
Yeah.
Did you start figuring that out then, that coaching was where you wanted to go?
Yeah, well, at 15, 16, we needed an adult to run our outrigger program, so I taught some older guys, how to paddle. I said, "You're our coach."
Well, I think we're getting right there. But let me ask you this. So, final thing on education and career. Was coaching what you were thinking? You talked about going to college and trying to get a scholarship, but after that, did you? And it wasn't the military at this point. Did you have your eyes on something else, or was it coaching that you wanted to get into?
No, it was a real lost era for me, to be honest with you. I floated around. I did some odd jobs here and there. And we weren't going to avoid the draft. We were like the second year of the lottery. So we were all good. If we got our numbers, we were all going to head to Baja, but that's kind of the joke of it. We wouldn't have. But no, those were kind of the lost years. And now looking back at it, that I'd have wished I'd have had a bigger brother or somebody grab me by the back of the neck and say, focus. Get busy in business. Get busy as this. Get busy in this trade or something. But I just traveled, goofed around, ran boats up and down the coast. I worked for Air Cal back in the day.
Air Cal, the airlines?
Yeah.
What were you doing for them?
I was on the ramp and then worked the front counter and got my pilot's license.
You did?
All kind of fun stuff. Yeah.
See? All right, there's 2 things. I didn't know you rode. I didn't know you had your pilot's license.
You want to go fly with me?
No.
Good answer.
I'll go in a boat or a truck. I'm not flying with you. Okay, so let's bring it back. You said that you had already started coaching a little bit young paddling. So we're going to go back a bit. So we've now gotten through college. We've talked a little bit about the lost years. Let's go back to where paddling fits in with you, because we talked about the canoes and somebody had made a mold of one. But let's talk about paddling, because you grew up with it at the sea base. So talk about how you got thrown in boats, and when did you start? What was that like for you?
Well, the canoe's right underneath my bedroom window. I'm 7 years old, and all these good-looking, big poly guys, and
When you say Polynesian guys, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and all the Hawaiians.
They're all coming over
There's
and staying there?
Big community of Hawaiian people here in Southern Cal, well, in Orange County right here. And paddling was a part of that. And in those days, they're the only ones that really paddled. And so that culture, that environment, every time you came off the water, you eat. Every time you play music, there's people dancing. After all the races, it's always getting together. Nobody's in a rush. Nobody's leaving. And so all the friends that you made was all around the Hawaiian culture. And so I kind of feel lucky to have been able to be raised in that culture with the Kalama family, a whole bunch of family. And so that's kind of how I started. I'm a little punk kid, and in those days there was no kids paddling, it was all adults. And there was no age groups, for the younger kids. And so I'm steering these older groups.
So hold on, when you say steering, so we're talking 6-man outriggers, and you get, even though it's all adults, you somehow get thrown in or invited in with the adults, or were they already starting to do kid stuff?
No, there was no kids paddling.
So how old are you starting to paddle with adult Hawaiian,
7,
Polynesian?
8,
Got it.
9, 7. Those first couple of years, and it was really cool because the women, oh good God, they couldn't paddle a canoe. They can't steer a canoe. They got to have a man in the back. It was really odd thinking.
That's the way the thinking was back then?
And there was no women that knew really how to steer, so they had open steersmen. So a man could sit in the back of the canoe and steer a woman's race. These are just sprints. They're just half mile.
Oh, okay.
And so here's the 180-pound guy sitting in the back of a canoe, or a little 90-pound punk kid. My first medals were novice women, freshman women. I'm getting medals in the women's race. That's kind of how I got started. Then we got a group of us kids, and we started racing, and then they started age group paddling. 18 and unders, and then we got into 16s and 14s. So that's where we are today. But the 18 and unders was a big,
big shift.
Yeah, we're the tough guys, 18 and unders. And in fact, that's when Bud.
So Bud Hole.
Yes.
What?
Don't say it again.
HOHL. We all love Bud. He's a historian of the sport. But talk a little bit. You were going to go there. He decided, we had a pretty good group here, 18 and under kids. And he said, listen, let's go to Hawaii and race in their state championship race. That was in Kailua Bay. We put together our 18 and under team. But Bud's influence on Hawaiiana, everything was about Hawaiian tradition and culture. We had to make our own paddles here. And so we went over and raced and won. Oh, they didn't like that. And it's all the guys all my era, the Walter Guilds and the Dale Hopes and all Downing brothers that were racing 18 and unders in those days. You look back, it's pretty cool. These are like the who's who.
Yeah,
in Hawaii, still today.
So we beat them, and then we got chased off the beach. No, I'm kidding.
But hold on. But how did a bunch of kids from Southern California go over there and beat the people that are living that life? Like, what was it? How you trained? Was it who coached you? What was it?
Yeah, training. Well, hold on. Their training, there's not so much difference in training in those days. We made better turns, which helped a lot.
And these, for clarity, these were short course races at the time?
1 mile sprint races.
Not like the big long distance ones, which we'll talk about.
Quarter-mile course. We made a lot of turns. And it was fun. And there's also, we were pretty fit, pretty strong kids. So we had a good run. And then that's when Bud's influence really took hold. Because Bud, he built 30 plus, almost 40 fiberglass canoes. He had the mold. Was passed on to him, and he built the canoes, and he built paddles, and he built the courses and the buoys, and everything was that he touched, he had a major influence on for the sport in Southern Cal. And so that passed on to us kids. And then us junior paddlers moved on, and as we did, they would be busy coaching other programs or involved. So his influence was really big on me. And
Can you, and Bud's still a figure in your life and at NAC, and his daughter Malia as well. What got Bud into the Hawaiiana and all the boat building? Did he spend time over there, or was that all here?
I don't.
Oh, you don't
really know.
Good, because I'm going to have him in here. I know every time I say that, you're like, I don't know how you're going to manage that one, but I look forward to it.
I know Bud's real name, but I don't know exactly how he got started.
Okay.
He was super fit and good athlete, and he came in with with a group of buddies of his, and then we played rugby together, and we'd paddle in the summer and play rugby in the winter, back and forth.
Interesting.
And so still today he's my best friend.
Yeah. That's so cool. I wasn't aware of his influence in that. So in a nutshell, let me just share a little bit, and then we're going to talk about...
I'm going way off.
No. This is awesome. This is exactly what we want. But we'll talk a bit about Hawaii racing or long distance racing in just a minute. But let me kind of tee this up. So I've kind of got the chronology of your paddling going from when you started outrigger racing at 7 years old. Your first Catalina race, how old were you?
14.
Isn't that awesome?
I think.
Yeah. Well, at least that's what you have here. You had mentioned in 71, so you were 16, you went to Hawaii and won the state championships, 18 and under. In 76 was your first time paddling Molokai. And at that time it says it was 50 miles, that course?
Yeah, that particular year they started, the Molokai Channel race usually starts at Halealona Harbor, the west end of, on the island of Molokai, Old Barge Harbor, and would finish at 2 or 3 different finish spots on Oahu. But this time they decided to start from Kaunakakai, the town on Molokai, a little tiny harbor, and that added 12 miles or so.
That's all.
Yeah. And they haven't done it since. But it was a lot easier logistics-wise, because getting all the canoes and the paddlers and everybody down to the harbor was a major challenge.
Gotcha.
Because the ranch in those days wasn't so friendly with people coming onto their property, and the roads were tough back in those days. So they thought maybe we'll start from town, because that's where all the canoes got shipped into. I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they went back to the harbor, because that's a mean race.
50 miles. That is an incredible distance of that race.
Yes and no. It's not the distance, it's the damn canoes.
Oh.
I challenge anybody today. Go race what we call a Malia. I can't think about it in your world, in the prone world or something. Imagine racing a redwood prone board versus what you can race now, all these composite boards. That's what the difference in the equipment from the Malia canoe to what these unlimited canoes are now. So it's not the distance. These things were just barges, man.
Wow.
So heavy, so hard to maintain any kind of boat speed, and not surfy. So those were fun days.
Yeah, those are great stories, right? How cool that you got to do that. And then we get to 78. And I think maybe we'll start the next story here of the long distance stuff. Molokai, 1978. You want to talk about that year?
I was working at AirCal, and old buddy of mine, I was working at AirCal, and I got called from a guy named Pete Carolyn. And I don't know where to call him, a friend or not, but we certainly knew each other. And the reason I say that is Pete was pretty controversial. He would go from club to club, wouldn't make the first team, so he'd try to start his own team. And he says, listen, I'm going to take a group over to Molokai. I want you to steer them. I said, no, come on, Pete, I'm busy. I got a job. No, I'll pay for everything. I said, no, come on, I'm not into it. I've got these Olympic paddlers. I said, well, who are you talking about? I knew John Van Cleef. I knew Chuck Leida. They were from this area. Then he named a couple of Canadians, and then he named a couple marathon paddlers. And I said, no, there's no way you put a group together that has never been in a canoe together and go do this challenge. He goes, what, they're good athletes. I said, it doesn't matter. There's something about outrigger paddling that you need to get together prior to the race to work out all of the kinks. Well, he talked me into it. John talked me into it. And sure enough, we put this group together. I think we only, it's fuzzy, but I don't think we practiced more than a few times together here. And I swear to God, Mark, I could write a screenplay. I could write a book about just this one trip. So many little stories happened that I don't know how it happened, but this is the very first time a mainland team won the men's Molokai race. It had always been dominated by Hawaiian teams and then recently by Tahitian teams. But the reason the Tahitian teams came to the forefront was because of equipment. Their canoes, imagine you go out and paddle a shortboard and somebody's on a longboard and they take one stroke and you're going on your shortboard. You can't keep up with them. The lagoon boats, the Tahitian boats, had that advantage with their design. And in 76 and 7, 8, somewhere in that area is when Hawaii decided to have these canoe specs, trying to create class racing, trying to get everybody to race very, very similar boats, which I thought was a good move. So 78, okay, so we put this group together, we go over there, and everything is stacked against us. Everything from the canoe. We didn't have a canoe. We got to borrow a canoe. Well, this guy, Pete Carolyn, is so controversial. You just don't go into the, Madison Square Garden and tell the Celtics they don't know how to play basketball. He's over there spouting off, oh, we're going to kick all their, we're going to beat them, we got Olympic athletes. You just don't do that, man. So no one helped us. No one gave us anything. We had crap canoes, broken yakus, ripped spray covers. Couldn't get the canoe over. We missed the barge. Couldn't get the canoe over to Molokai. Put it on a sampan. I went over the day before on the sampan. And lucky, really lucky I did that. Because it started blowing what they call Kona, kind of like Santa Ana here. The wind is shifting. And so on the day of the race, Tahiti, outrigger, they're going to match each other, and they decide to go south. And I knew that there was still some pretty strong movement coming trade. And so start line, they went that way, and I went this way, and actually went, from what I'm told, went the highest anybody's ever gone, above Rabbit Island, and then right about 2.5, 3 hours, hard left, and we just started running down with the swells, and the current was incoming that day, and we just lucked out. Get to Diamond Head Buoy, and all of a sudden, because you can see the helicopters following the leaders way down south, and all of a sudden here comes a helicopter, and here comes an official boat, and they're going, who are you? Because we didn't have, I don't know if we even had a number decal on our canoe. Who are you guys? Kind of thing. And then they kind of figured it out, and sure enough, we come together at Diamond Head, and we're ahead, and we won the race. And they still didn't know who we were, because it's the silliest name I've ever heard, but that was Blazing Paddles. And still today, if you ask any of the old timers about Blazing Paddles, they'll remember it. But again, it's a much longer story. All kinds of cool little things happen, but it's the relationship that I had with a guy named Chick Ho, Michael Ho's father, Derek Ho's father, surfers in the day. He kind of adopted us. He was down by himself, Haleakala Harbor, just, catching some manini. And it was his influence that says, here's what I would do if I was you.
No way.
And
is that when you came in on the sampan?
Yeah.
So
nobody's around. Just
that was just fortuitous that you had jumped on and you had missed the barge. And had you not missed the barge and you had been on the barge and come over the day, would you think you would have followed the...
It's a parade. You always follow. You don't do anything. If you want to match, if you want to know what your competitors are doing, you better stay with them.
Yeah.
It's very seldom do you do anything that's spooky, that's on your own, because usually it doesn't work out.
Pretty ballsy.
Kind of.
Or very educated. One of the two.
Very stupid. But it worked out.
Yet it did.
And so that was the start of this era, if this is where you're going.
Yeah,
That's the start of what happened next, which was, okay, let's start a club. And I had Bud, and I had Eddie Frazier that was just then starting composite boat building. But composite back then was Kevlar. There still wasn't carbon available as much. It was still aeronautical. And so we decided to start our own club, and one club was called Puamana, morphed into the Balboa Bay Club, and then that morphed into offshore. And it was because of, I could make people go fast and break things, Bud could fix things, and a guy named John Rader could pay for everything.
Good combination.
Kind of the foundation, and Eddie, of course, and that's kind of the foundation of how we got offshore started. And offshore became a pretty good club.
You want to talk about that?
Well, in '79 was the first women's Molokai race. And I thought it was really important that we had to have a presence over there, because we thought, you know.
Going back to your childhood, women can't paddle, they can't steer.
And I don't ever want to sound disrespectful at all, ever. But it's kind of like, who are you? You know, this is our water, this is our sport. And
this is the Hawaiian.
Yeah, it's kind of the attitude over there. And so I thought it was really important to take, because we had some really good athletes. And I knew a little bit about paddling, and I said, listen, let's put a group together. And in those days, it was a 12-woman race. And just missed it, came second. But it showed them, but it also showed us the confidence that, hey, we can do this. So I had that core group of girls for years, that's offshore group, and it had some pretty good luck over there.
How much luck? I think, how many wins did you guys get as the women's team in Molokai at offshore?
10.
Yeah, it's incredible. And a lot of those women still paddle here at Newport Aquatic Center, right?
Yeah.
Who steered for them, typically?
The name that's most associated is Mindy Clark.
So you want a funny story? I don't know if I've ever told you this. When I was 13, I got my first job at Surfside Sports down 23rd Street.
Kidding.
Who was my store manager?
She was your manager.
Mindy was my manager for a couple of years. And this is probably right around the time she was starting to paddle. I didn't know anything about paddling. I didn't know anything about her world of paddling until probably 2 decades later, when I started getting into the paddling world, and I'm hearing her name all the time, and I'd start to see her around. But I never, at that time, she was just a surfer woman running the surf shop that I worked at, which is pretty amazing. Just small world.
And swear to God, whether she's sitting right here or not, the most non-athletic steersman ever in the sport of outrigger paddling.
So what was it about her that got it done?
2 things. One, she had a really great personality to kind of, we call it whip, kind of, running the reins, when to go up, when to go down, talking. And so there was a lot of confidence and a lot of trust in her as a steersman over the years. And the second thing was, you put a bunch of really good paddlers ahead of her.
Gotcha. Well, I think you did, that's great. I think you did the same thing. So Willie Reichenstein has been in this chair, and he tells the story that he paddled with you. He was an Olympic K1 or C1 paddler, the high kneel kayak paddler, very accomplished bull of a paddler, still is, and his son Will, and his wife Liz. But he tells the story that he got the call up, and his second time ever in an outrigger was the Molokai race with you guys, and you guys won it that year. That's the kind of caliber of people you were throwing in the boat.
And that's when I referred to the attitude of that era. It was, again, you don't come in and tell somebody, Dennis Campbell, love him or hate him, he would come in and he was convinced that he was going to win the race. And so he goes on TV, he goes, or there's newspaper articles. And back in those days, they did documentaries on every Molokai race for the men and the women. And they would play this excerpt where Tommy Connors is talking to the outrigger team, all the big studs, Mark Haynes and those guys. And if Dennis thinks he's going to come over and kick out, he's got another thing. They would play this up, us against them. And I was coming at it from the other direction, because I was now involved in the Olympic flatwater paddling program. And people were sharing with me. I had Hungarian coaches, Canadian coaches, sharing training techniques, all the things that you need to become a good athlete. But the secret is, how do you take the individual athletes and put them together as a good team? And that's where I kind of liked going, and then being able to share that with Walter, mostly the guys from Outrigger at the beginning, Tommy and Mahanes, those guys, sharing with them. They'd say, well, what do you guys do? Well, you guys go out, what, 4 to 6? Well, we go out 3 times a day. And then tomorrow we're going to go out 2 times a day and then wait and run. And this was the training schedule that these elite, the top athletes were using. So being able to put them into one canoe together without any training together, because over there it's all about the mana. It's it's our club and it's our hui. We're together, and that worked. But now all of a sudden we went over a couple times, and I don't think we even trained 2 or 3 times together. And I challenge. That's a tough gig. It's a tough thing to be able to take these people and put them in a canoe, and you're going to make all the mistakes. So you try to plan ahead of time. I know what mistakes can be made, so you try to prevent those. And when they do happen, you just deal with it, minimize it. And the same thing on the girls' team. Because I would bring in, we had our core paddlers, men, and core paddlers of women. And then you always bring in 2 or 3, call them ringers.
Ringers, yep.
And 2 things would happen. It elevated everybody's practice. Oh my God, look what she can do. And it's all pull-ups and it's all running and what they can do. And so it elevated our training program, the seriousness of it over here. It was pretty serious at times. And then so it elevated our training program, but it also brought something new. There's something cool about go to Disneyland and see it through somebody's eyes that's never been there before. Or go, in this race, all of a sudden I got 3 Swedish girls and they're going, Billy, we're going in the ocean? I said, yeah. Billy, I don't know if I like the ocean. I said, okay, don't worry, you'll be fine. And they just loved it. And so all of everything's new. The plumerias are new, the race is new, the finish is new, everything's new. But when they're in the canoe, they're all working together. And I'm just the conductor. Sometimes I got to bring up the bass and drop down the percussion or bring this. I got to know all the paddlers. Some are diesels. They're not. I'm a diesel. I'm not a very good sprinter and starter, but I'll tell you what, no one beats me at the end. Kind of mentality. So you got to kind of know when to use them and when to hold on to them and then use them at the end. And that worked out. That formula worked out pretty good for us. So it was a big influence having those people. And it's hard. Everybody thinks, oh, you had Olympic paddlers. Well, try it. I challenge anybody, try it. It's not easy to put a group together, and especially for the men because I just coached. We didn't have a coach. I was just kind of player coach. So that added some challenges.
Well, you figured it out, which is cool. We're going to talk about coaching, but no. Like this is, you walked us right into coaching, which is awesome. I love this. Let me ask you this, just kind of put a pin in Molokai and Catalina. Those same groups, offshore, blazing paddles. How many times did you guys win Molokai? You remember? Was it 3 times? Of course you remember.
For the men?
Yeah, for the men.
I won 4 men's. 1 was blazing paddles, 3 was offshore. And the women was 10. And then like 16 Catalinas or something.
The women, 16 Catalinas. No, it's incredible. I mean,
Think about it. Think about 16 years ago. And it's actually, there's a little bit of pressure. Because things change all the time. It's not the same group, so you're bringing in new people, you're bringing in new equipment, and then there's always the element of luck, because somebody's going to be sick, or something's going to break, or something's going to happen with the motorboat, or something. There's always that element that you got to plan for. And I was just lucky enough to always, plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Well, I also like what you said. You had Bud that could fix things, you could break things, and John that could pay for things.
Yeah.
And then you also have all these people that want to train hard and win. I always think back to what Krista Zur, Krista very well, 2-time gold medal winner in the Olympics. She said when she came to NAC, she was, she had tried to make the Olympics for 12 years and hadn't made it. And she came to NAC with her husband Rami, and she's like, all these people are training so hard. They're not going to the Olympics. They're just, why are they training so hard just for fun? And she's like, it totally re-motivated her. She's like, if they're just training this hard to have fun, well, I want to do it. I'm going to train. And it totally changed. And she made the Olympics thereafter. So
She also went with us across the channel once.
yeah, well, she's now super on outrigger.
Yeah.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
They both are incredible athletes and coaches. So, but you just walked us right into coaching. The ability to take these groups, these elite athletes, and put them in a pot and put them together and go win. Coaching's been a big part. And at some point you pivoted from a paddler to like a paddler coach, and then on to really, I think, just coaching primarily. Is that right?
Yeah, at some point you realize your strengths and weaknesses, and I got a bigger mouth than biceps. So I knew where I was headed, and that was very rewarding to me. I like doing that. I'm not into the trinkets. I don't remember much about any of the winning. I'm going to look in the eye and tell you that. I don't remember a whole lot. Of course, it's a big accomplishment, and it was a big deal, and I don't discount it at all or diminish it. But there's some times that you just have other races, other something that, what they say, a win is not always a victory and a defeat is not always a loss kind of thing. There's some times I've gone across that channel or other athletic events with others that stick in my mind. I can remember those. It was just a great vibe. It was just something cool about that was above the competition. I'm not about the competition. I want to get introducing new people to new things. And water sports is that craft that I've been able to utilize, and trying to find ways to get people the opportunity, because it's just like Hawaii or around here, anything else. If you're lucky, you got brother, cousin, uncle with all the toys. If you're over here, you got no toys. So how do you learn to paddle, to surf, to sail, to foil, all of that stuff? So I want to create these opportunities where people can have the same chance to go down there and use the same equipment and find out if it's for them or not.
Well, awesome. And I think it sets us up for two conversations. I'm going to let you tell it however you want, because what you just kind of constructed was Newport Aquatic Center, right? I mean,
yeah.
A lot of what you just talked about is provided by this place, whether it be for rowing or paddling at a competitive level, at a community level, special groups, et cetera. But there's also the coaching part that is a big part that they definitely dovetail. I was going to take us into the coaching part. And we talked earlier about your dad and the Sea Scout and all that stuff. And then we talked about Ernie Johnson, your football coach. Talk real quickly about just your life and coaching and how it pivoted and what that's been for you.
I don't know exactly if there was a date or a time. It was just had to, out of necessity. If you want to go play, someone's got to organize it. And so I'd open my big mouth. And when we got to a point where we're starting now on the elite level, now you can't just do that. Now you've got to have some credentials. You got to have some cred. You got to have, in order to even to get hired, you had better have accomplished something. And so I love the idea of helping somebody else. I don't know what you call it. It's just helping somebody else and watching it through their eyes, whether it's an individual or a team, and watching it grow and see where it's going to go. I can't predict it, but if we prepare and we do the best we can, then there's always going to be some kind of success. So the coaching philosophy from that is pretty simple. It's the word simple. Just keep everything simple. Everybody gets this, what we call paralysis by analysis. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to watch the video. Everybody wants to have that perfect technique. Everybody thinks that this 1/4 inch and that 1/8 inch. And nowadays I'm out. I couldn't coach today.
Why?
Because I don't do it that way. Mm-hmm. The technique is important, but there's just basics. When they're out there trying to find an extra 1/4 inch or an extra 1/4 knot because they're doing something, I can't do that. For me, the coaching of the team is taking this group And some of them are going to be stronger than that, like I said earlier, and some of them aren't. And how are you going to put them together to accomplish what you want to do? So in doing that, you just got to keep it simple, because you have to put yourself in their position. You're either yelling at them or you're trying to get something constructive to them from a motorboat, and they're looking up at you. And how do you sound to them? You're trying to say something. Are they receiving what you're trying to say? And that's always the challenge of any coach. This is nothing new. It's always the challenge, but there's always a chance that you're going to lose them. And if you lose them, then you're never going to get it back. Mm-hmm. You just can't. You've always got to make sure that you're ending on a positive. You suck, your time, you're terrible, but I love what you're doing on those kinds of ideas, just to keep them engaged so that they're going to work on their own, because all a coach's job to do is to be, I think, provide technical support and moral support. That's it. Otherwise, they're the ones that have to do it. I can't go out and perform for them. My job is done. When they hit the water, I've got nothing to do with it. So that's kind of, I just keep things simple.
And where did you learn, do you think you picked that up from the experiences with your dad or with Ernie Johnson, or just time and spending time with other groups? Like, it sounds like you naturally started to coach from within the boat and putting these groups together and figuring out how to communicate, or was it a combination of all of these things?
That period of time when flatwater kayaking kind of came to Southern Cal, and there was a lot of international influence, and a lot of them had all of the, all of a sudden we're doing VO2 testing and all this stuff that it's very scientific, and I'm sure there's a very important role that it plays. But at the end of the day, it's still put the paddle in and make the boat go fast for this period of time, because where they say fatigue makes cowards of all of us.
Fatigue makes cowards of all of us.
You can't win if you're busy sucking air.
Yeah.
You can't. You've got to prepare for that, and so that's a pretty simple. How you do that can be pretty complex, not complicated, but pretty complex. So how you do that, I just like to keep it in simple terms. And my days of coaching are probably not going to do the same thing in today's world as it did then, because now they're all just looking for tenths of seconds, and so it's a different world.
Got it. Super interesting. I want to shine a light real quickly on this book. I've been kind of quoting it quite a bit. You loaned this to me. This is an incredible history of the Molokai race. It's got all the dates, it's got pictures and stories, and it's really, really neat. Tons of quotes. You're in there quite a bit. And it's just a really, really cool book. So if anybody really wants to get the history of the Molokai outrigger race, because people that listen to this, even though it's not a paddling podcast, it's a great book if you're into that stuff. But there's a quote that I took, and it's a much longer quote, but I'm only going to share the very end of it because it relates to this. But it says, Whitford's friendly, sometimes self-deprecating manner belies an innovative individual who paid his dues early in his coaching years as he's learned from his mistakes and developed an effective philosophy. And you just shared that philosophy. It really, I think, spoke to the fact that you're definitely one of those people that did it and turned it into a coaching. It's not do as I say, not as I do. You've done it. Like in the stories we were talking about with blazing paddles and offshore and all the accomplishments. So super fun.
You gotta lose. You gotta lose to win.
100%.
It's a silly thing, and there's a pattern, even if you study this, because the Tahitians would come over, and it takes 2 or 3 years, and then they would cycle up, and then Outrigger Canoe Club would cycle up, and then Molokai would cycle up, and there would always be those 2 or 3 years. I've lost more than I've won. I've come in second an awful lot of times, but every time you do that, you take that lesson, I should have gone inside, how come this happened? So I learned from that. And the Aussies did the same thing. They participated 4 or 5 years, and then they won a couple. And the Illinois Brigade came through, and they won after 2 or 3 years. So you got to go through that, what they call paying the dues process. Yeah. It's a weird sport, Mark. I don't know why we do it. You work so hard to go so slow. It's crazy.
That's very funny. Well, listen, you've spoke a lot about Hawaii, and I know you lived there for a while in between. You want to talk, like, you grew up with the Hawaiiana and paddling outrigger with the Polynesians that lived in Newport back then, and you've kind of talked about how Bud really embraced it, and so it's been a big part of you. But then you go over and you're spending a lot of time racing over there. You know a lot of these people, and then you moved over there. How was it? We don't need to spend a ton of time, but I think you lived over there like 10 or so years. How was that for you?
Probably the best chapter of my life.
Wow.
And I kind of wish I was still there.
Really?
And it was perfect timing for me because we had just started building, or just basically got the permission to build the Aquatic Center, and then it got a little too political for my blood, so I said, I'm gone. So I picked up within 2 weeks, moved to Hawaii, worked for the Olympic Committee, and started this outreach program over there, Center of Excellence kind of program. And because there was a couple of paddlers already there. You know, Johnny had spoken to that to you earlier.
Johnny Puake when he was in here. Yeah.
And some individuals, but they were really trying to get some feeder programs going in the youth, because it's hard to beat youth. So I said, yeah, I can do this. So I went over there and started this program, and the Hawaii Canoe Kayak Team, the HCKT, and luckily had some really key people over there help me out. And that, honest to God, to this day, that's probably the best time of my life. Not only because of the paddling influence that we could do, because over there it's easy. It's just playground. What do you want to do today? We'll go surf. Oh, let's go sail. Let's go windsurf. Let's go paddle. And so taking those kids and being able to give them some of the skills and the equipment, that was easy. That wasn't that difficult to do. Traveling with them, now that's a whole different ballgame, but it was really cool. And so that period of time, the last 5 years I actually lived on Molokai, and that was probably the most special time, because that's a tough island on one hand. On the other hand, my best friends in the world and the best memories, plus I had the keys to 62,000. I worked for Molokai Ranch, so I did a lot of really cool stuff for the island over there, and still have some really great memories and friends of that. So that set me up. Came back over here on a 5-year rescue mission to try and get the Aquatic Center back on its feet again, and I never went back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I love the stories. I mean, I've had the fortunate ability to get over to Molokai a few times, both from paddling and also just to go visit the ranch and do some stuff with some friends. Like, it is a stunning and more or less empty, like, throwback. Like, it feels like you're hundreds of years, for some exceptions. It's just this stunning open land, you know? So I can't imagine living there for 5 years. But listen, we're now sliding into Newport Aquatic Center. And let me just say, I know you loved it over there. I'm really glad you came back, because the Newport Aquatic Center, as many people that like, it is the gem of Orange County. It is, I always say, it's the third point on my triangle of life: my house, my office, and the Newport Aquatic Center. I'm probably there 5 days a week, and it's been that way for decades. Lots and lots of my friends, my community, are paddlers and rowers and people that use the facility daily. And what you've created there, with help of the community and so many others, is super special and world-class in so many ways. So I really want to have you talk about what is the Aquatic Center. It could just be a building on the water, but that's not, it's so much more than that. So can you talk about what the mission was and is, and what Newport Aquatic Center provides to the community?
Well, I was lucky at the Sea Scout base because you had access, right? We could store a couple boats and you had some access, and then got booted out, got moved over to 18th Street. Newport Canoe Club was over there. And then another opportunity over at the Harbor Department Beach, the Coast Guard beach over there, because it started becoming really difficult. Where are you going to put 2, 3, 6, 7 canoes, 60, 80 people, parking, noise, pooping, all the stuff that you do with a club, you know, a gathering of people? And land started becoming $1 bazillion a square foot in Newport, so they didn't want us around. And the colleges had their two, UCI and Orange Coast had their boathouses, but they would not entertain any collaboration. They didn't. No, we are 100% rowing and very traditional. And rightly so. That was their tradition. And so it became apparent we had to find our own home if we wanted to continue, because I was at UCI Boat House in a little tin shed, and the Santa Ana's blew it apart, and all our equipment got ruined, and so we needed to find somewhere. So when this property in Dover Shores is called North Star Beach, was a created tideland from the dredging spoils of the two dead-end channels that create Dover Shores fingers right there, Morning Star, Evening Star, North Star. So this is triangular section, about 13 acres, was created, and developers licking their chops. They could build 30 homes out there. But it was created tideland, so it was dedicated to public access park. So it just sat dormant forever. And it was inside the boundary of the ecological reserve of the Back Bay. And in the late 70s, Irvine Company was going to build, I think you spoke about this at one point, they were going to build 11,000 slip marina in the Back Bay and create another Newport harbor, residence, slips, marinas, all that kind of stuff. I saw it. I saw the mock-up.
There's a great, just for anybody that's interested in some of this stuff, there's a great podcast called Newport Beach in the Rearview Mirror.
That's right.
Bill Lobdell, who's also in here. Bill does a whole episode on what was going to happen in the community, that the folks, the activists that got quashed, because we have this spectacularly beautiful natural lands that Newport Aquatic Center sits on the boundary of.
Super, I don't know how, just super lucky, the timing. Could never do it today. But the timing back then, the Robinson family was huge. There's some other names that were very influential in helping, and Evelyn Hart, as the mayor at the time, said, listen, I got this idea. And they said, well, how are you going to pay for it? I said, I don't know. But if I get the land, I'll get it paid for. Then I go to the money people. They said, yeah, that's a great idea, but how are you going to get the land? I said, I don't know. But if I get the money, I'll get the land. So we kind of went back and forth. And sure enough, the timing was perfect because of the environmental push to protect the Back Bay Reserve, let's call it, because it's part of the chain of reserves of wetlands up and down the coast for the migrating birds and so on. So we lucked out because the mission was human power craft, public access, and juniors. But it was an all-disciplined aquatic center that the public could utilize all the way to Olympic athletes. And so it hit all the right buttons politically. So we lucked out on getting that piece of property dedicated for a concept of the Aquatic Center. Okay, now we got to build. We incorporated in 1982. John and I incorporated.
John Van Cleve?
Yeah, incorporated the corporation. Took about 6 years and 13 governmental agencies to get the approval to build. And in 87, did a groundbreaking and started construction. So long story short, that's how it got started. Got a little too political for my blood. That's when I decided to move to Hawaii, start the programs over there. But the Aquatic Center was built. The Aquatic Center was operated, and it worked. It was providing the access. It was providing a home base for some Olympic canoe kayak. It started a junior rowing program, and there was some public access because back in those days there was no plastic kayaks. There was no real rental business. That didn't come until a little later. So, okay, it hit all the buttons, but it wasn't being operated as it didn't make any money. It couldn't survive. It couldn't pay staff. It operated. Don't let me get wrong. And there were some people that did some really, really good things for the Aquatic Center. Getting the dock built, walking this through government agencies and maintaining it. But there was never a chance for it to grow. And so that's when I decided to come back and take it to that next level. And we expanded. We're 18,000 square foot under roof now. And it's amazing because people like you that come at 5:30, 6 in the morning have no idea what goes on at noon, and you have no idea what goes on at 3 in the afternoon. I got 200 kids in our junior rowing program. And then we have evening programs. So the dynamic, I wanted to do a time lapse.
Yeah.
The dynamics of it is pretty cool. It's just a silly boathouse. but it's amazing.
Oh, it's so much more.
It's amazing how much activity goes on down there. And then over the decades, the international influence all over the world, man. That's why it's critical that I get this legacy hall, the archives put together. Otherwise, we're going to lose it.
So you're talking about some of the future-looking stuff that you're starting to work on. No. But you talked about so many things. Talk about some of the programs. And let me just start by saying, clearly there's a big outrigger piece, but the junior rowing and the rowing programs are robust and unbelievable. And I'm going to turn it over to you, but I would contend, I talk about it all the time, because being there as long as I have, you watch these scrawny little kids come in when they're in, junior high school. And then when they grow out, you watch them over this 4, 5, 6 year period. And when they leave, and they're all taller than me, they're men and women, they're all 6 foot tall, as fit as any humans can be. They're all getting scholarships to top schools all over the country, year after year after year. Now that's on the rowing side. There are no scholarships, unfortunately, on the outrigger side. And a lot of the rowers come back and get into rowing as adults, get into paddling as adults. But there are so many incredible programs. And then there's the support. So let's talk about junior rowing real quick. And we'll talk about some of the outrigger programs that Makapo and some of the others. And just real quickly, talk about some of the groups and how it all works there.
It was designed as a multi-discipline boathouse. It wasn't just a rowing boathouse. It wasn't just an outrigger program. And trying to get those disciplines to live together was a real difficult challenge. You can imagine, rowers have their way of doing things, and they're all very successful and very traditional, and then paddlers are,
different.
Bartenders and ex-jocks, and so it's a different
hardware store
world.
owners. Right.
So trying to put the organization chart together, it's pretty simple because it's just a family. It's an ohana. And I'm like the dad, if you will. I have siblings, all these programs. And one's bigger than the other, but not more important than the other. We all live together. We all have to share one building, one parking lot, one dock, one access. And how do you do that when some people go forward and some people go backwards and some people come once a week and some people come 6 days a week? So the dynamics of putting all of that together has been a challenge, but we got the recipe now, and it's working. I'm really happy with the direction that it's going now. And the junior rowing program by far is the biggest impact on the facility. We're probably 90 women, 90 men-ish, somewhere in there, with our middle school and high school. It's a club program like club volleyball, club polo, club soccer. And we have kids from all over Orange County, Long Beach come down, Capistrano come up. I had 2 girls from Corona that drove down every day.
Wow.
But it paid off. They both got full ride scholarships. So the junior rowing program is as much as you want to talk about results and these kids and all, it's really been an interesting shift. So it's not result driven. It's more, the core values of teaching kids. We see their kids more than their parents do in a lot of cases. And so the coaches have a huge influence on that and how the facility is run and how the respect and for equipment, for each other, for the coaches, and couple that now with their academic that they have to, deal with. And then social on top of that. So we don't get a lot of athletes.
You don't get a lot of athletes.
No, the athletes are already in club soccer, club polo, club volleyball. And so they're locked in. Boy, those coaches want them. That's, so they've got them already locked into their programs. And we'll get a lot of our success stories are, oh my God, I didn't realize my daughter would get up at 6 a.m. and she's so excited and they're so dedicated, and my son is eating 4 boxes of cereal a week. And so then we're able to take them and, as you said, watch them grow and be successful. We do get some burned out polo, some burned out soccer kids that come over, or they're friends of. But that's the struggle, is our recruiting, especially in this area, because there's so many other things to do. There's, who wants to go down 6 in the morning, 6 days a week,
I don't
in
know.
some cases.
But there's a lot of them. Every year, there's a lot of them.
So really proud of the junior rowing program and the successes it's had and continues to have. But the staff is the key to everything. Tell you what, Mark, it's becoming so difficult because it's so easy now for clubs to offer coaches big salaries. And so it's really difficult. When you find a diamond, you want to hold on to them. And nowadays, man, they're getting recruited to go to other clubs, and it's a real challenge. Because not only do we have a club, if you look at other clubs, we have a facility we got to run. And we've got some really top-notch boats. So that challenge to hold on to the staff is becoming harder and harder and harder for us as a business.
Interesting.
So outside is, we always have the fundraising campaigns, and we're always looking for endowment opportunities and things like that. Back to the business part. It's a real tough deal. I'd rather just be coaching.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I mean, I watch it, and that goes back to what I was saying about you. Like, you were driving trucks this morning. Like, I don't know anybody that will spend more time driving, No. Again, but this is Billy. But I mean, with all reality, you will drive a truck anywhere in the country at any time, maybe twice, to take the boats, bring them back. You'll take the boat to go across to the island, and like you'll do anything for anybody at any time and not a complaint. It's really amazing. And I always say, like, when Billy decides to retire, like, it's going to take 8 people to replace you. So don't retire anytime soon. Real quickly, talk about just some of the cool community stuff, like the Makapo programs and there's some really cool programs that support folks that you wouldn't maybe think of as paddlers or outrigger or anything else.
It kind of happened naturally because outriggers are very user-friendly. Rowing is very difficult. Yeah. And so the outriggers are a great vehicle to put beginners in brand new. We'll take them out. We've created this double hull program. I take 2 400-pound canoes, lash them together, and take 12 people out. That's for kids. That's for birthdays. That's for corporate team building, for parties and stuff. We have triple hulls. I'll take them out with that. We have kids paddle camp in the mornings. In the summertime, we'll take them all over the harbor. So the outrigger has provided this opportunity, and we've taken that to the next level, if you will, on giving opportunities for people with disabilities. And it started with our blind program, this we call Makapo, Maka's eye, like night vision. And it started. I took a group. I don't know, you want to carry on with this or just, so anyway, Makapo program got started, and it's been so rewarding because we have people now that are blind or visually impaired, and they have an opportunity to race able-bodied people, if you will, without anything adaptive. There's nothing special about it, except the steersman has to see. But there's nothing special about equipment or anything. They just go out and they race. And so this program's been very successful in introducing and then getting into the competitive world, and now getting into more opportunities for kids, primarily kids with other disabilities. And they just compete. We had a team just compete in Hilo at the World Sprints with down kids and other disabilities. It's just such a great opportunity to use that boat. Can't do it in rowing very well. It's more difficult. So that's the Makapo Outrigger program, and they've been very successful getting sponsors. The King's Hawaiian Sweetbread is helping out a ton, Home Depot, so really proud of that. We also have a We Are Ocean Cancer Fighters organization, and that came about because of a guy named Jack Shimko who's been with you. You want to talk about that?
No, go ahead.
Tell me.
Well, no.
Okay, so the
great.
We Are Ocean is a component under our umbrella of the NAC, and it's because we can use the water sports of canoe, kayak, and outrigger as an opportunity for these people that are struggling with cancer to get outside of their normal activities or their struggles with chemo and treatment and family and psychological stuff. It's really worked out well for us. So we take them over to Catalina and we do a 5-day, 4-night camp. We're taking them up to the Gaviota Coast in November. We're doing a lot of these day trips where we'll take them sailing, we'll take them paddling, we'll take them surfing. And so that's a reason why the Aquatic Center was developed. It's the community, it's the opportunity to give people a chance that they would never have otherwise. Because if you are not part of a yacht club down here, you're not going to be able to access the water very easily. So this is a really cool way to do it.
Oh, it's so great. You just nailed it. And there's so many other ones. There's open water. There's the women on water, the WOW group of women that still row every morning. Like, there's just so many groups like this that use the NAC facility as their hub of operation. And it is a community in so many ways. Let me ask you this, and we're just about there. What's your why? Like, why has the NAC been such a passion play for you for so long?
That's all I know. I don't have an education. I don't have a trade. It's what, if you don't wake up with something to inspire you or something to contribute to, you kind of go through the day empty. And every day there's something to contribute to somebody in the NAC world. And it's just so simple. It's so simple to help people in a simple way. This is not spit and polish, marble, Rogers Gardens, fancy stuff. It's just step back to old Newport. It's a simple way to do things. It's a simple way to get people together and provide these opportunities, and just watch the kids smile and watch the adults smile, and they come back again and again and again. I just hope they pay their dues. No, I'm kidding.
Billy, I'll accept the second part of that answer, where you talked about the reason for getting up in the morning and doing things for others and helping out. I won't accept I don't have an education. Listen, I've had a number of people in here that said, like Keone Watson, you said, I don't have a college degree, but I've got a PhD in NSU. I went to North Shore University. I would contend that from a community building, a coaching, a development program, you have your PhD in each one of those, bar none. So thank you for all that you do, because I don't know what it would be without you. From creation to today, it's been an incredible part of my life, and so many of us rely on it for what we do and what makes us happy. So thank you.
Well, that recipe is easy to repeat. We're trying to do that. I'm doing it in Avalon. We're doing it maybe up at the Gorge with Val. We do it in the Delta there's other ways to do this, or other areas to do this as well. It's an easy recipe. Well,
let's keep building it. And so if people want to be a part of any of those, or to learn more about the Newport Aquatic Center, where do we send them? What can they do if they want to come down to NAC, if they want to learn about it online? What's the best way to get more information about NAC? NewportAquaticCenter.org?
Thank you.
I think it's .org, or is it
.com?
.com. Okay, yeah. NewportAquaticCenter.com. There's tons of stuff on YouTube. The Instagram is similar, Newport Aquatic Center on Instagram. Lots of great content. Come be a part of the community. Come down. You can rent kayaks. You can rent stand-up paddleboards. Come be a member and come have some fun and be part of the outrigger team, or come start rowing, or get your kids involved. If you live in Orange County, I hear people all the time, like, I didn't know it existed. I'm like, it's the best. It's by far the best part of this community, hands down.
I told you the only reason I came to do this was because of you, because you're the pitch man. You got it down, buddy. Thank you.
Well, thank you for running my favorite place. Billy Whitford, thank you so much for being on the Passion Project. Love you. Thank you. So grateful for what you do and what you've been doing for a long time. And thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks, Mark.